Welcome to Fredo Self-Discovery Game. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the big 5 shadows stopping you living your dream. So what's the 5 big shadows? So from my experience, the 5 big shadows I see in most of my clients are fear, depression, anxiety, addiction, and anger. And these come up again and again and again. And when I get clients coming to me with one of these big 5 shadows, the first question I ask is, well, how well do you know these? You know, if you're suffering from fear, if fear is affecting you in your life in a negative way, you know, how well do you know fear? And they'll often say like, oh yeah, I know fear really well. You know, I get fear a lot, therefore I know it well. And I've read a lot of books on it. And I've spoken to a lot of people about it. And it's like, I kind of say, well, you think you know fear well, but I would argue that you don't. You think you know it well because you experience it a lot. It doesn't mean you know it. You might have read a lot of books on fear, hundreds of books, and maybe you know a lot about fear on a mental level. You know a lot of data about fear. You know a lot of theory about fear. And of course you've experienced fear, but that doesn't mean you know a lot about it. You know, somebody could experience swimming in the shallow end of a swimming pool, and they'll say, yeah, I experience swimming a lot. You know, therefore I know swimming. And I say, well, not really. You've only ever been in the shallow end. You've only experienced it from a very small part of swimming. What about in the deep end? What about in the sea? What about if there's sharks there, or if there's beautiful coral and beautiful fish and snorkeling? You know, so how well do you know swimming if you've only been experiencing one part of it? And that's the same with fear, anger, depression, addiction, anxiety. It's normally because, you know, when you know something really well, like a subject, think about it. If you know a subject really well, in other words, you've studied something, you really know how to ride a bike or fix a car or be an accountant, do maths or science, or play tennis or some card game. You know that really well because you've learnt about it. You know everything about it. And when you know something really well, what happens? You're really good at it. You become really good at that tennis or maths or chess or backgammon or whatever you've been studying to be a lawyer. You get really good at it. You know, learning to ride a bike. When you know how to ride a bike really well, you know a bicycle really well, you become a master of that subject because you know it well. So therefore, if you're not very good at with fear, if you can't handle it, if you don't know how to use it, if it's the master of you, you don't know it well at all. You know it a bit, you know your anger a bit, you know your anxiety a bit because you experience it maybe a lot. Doesn't mean you know it well. Not at all. So this is something really, really important if you want to deal with your shadows. And I would suggest you do want to learn to get to know them so you can learn to handle them. And even better than handle them, how to use them for good. So here is the amazing hack, I would say. It's like a life hack, a shadow hack. How you can turn your shadows into your best friends by learning to use them. So for example, anger. Here's an analogy. if there was a really angry dog, like a guard dog, ferocious kind of dog, and, to a stranger, that dog is fear and anger. So we can call that dog fear or anger. And then it's angry to you, that's, oh my God, it's so angry. And you're scared. It's also fear. Yet to the dog's owner, it isn't any of those things. Because the owner knows the dog. He can use the dog to scare you. He can use the dog and use the dog's anger to frighten strangers off or trespassers. But to the owner, he knows how to use the dog. The dog's not his master. The dog's your master. Another analogy would be, imagine there's a cold lake, and I say, go and swim across it to the other side, and it's the middle of the night, it's freezing cold out, it's cold, ice cold in the lake, you don't know what's in the lake, and what are you going to do? You're probably not going to jump in and swim across it. Why? Because your fear is actually in the lake. It's right in front of you. You're not going to jump into your fear. It's actually in the lake, all your fear. But what if you had the ability to use your fear, to move your fear just behind you? So instead of being in the lake, all that fear, you move it behind you. And your fear is right behind you now. And what are you going to do now? You're going to jump in that lake without even thinking about it, because you want to get away from that fear. The difference is you've put the fear there consciously to help you, to motivate you to move away from it, to help you go in the direction where you want to go. And you can use that concept in life if you want to leave your job, but you're too scared. Why? Because your fear is not in your job, it's outside of your job. It's like, oh, what am I going to do without a job? I'm scared to look for a job. I'm scared to not have a job, not have money. All your fear is there in front of you, exactly where you want to go. So of course you're going to struggle leaving your job because you don't want to go towards your fear. But if you put all your fear into your job, into the space you are, make as much fear, put as much fear there as possible, you will probably leave that job pretty quickly. So you can see how you can use your shadow to help you. And the same with depression. With depression, again, I would argue, if you think you know depression well, this would mean you would be the master of depression, the same as you'd be the master of fear. The more you know something, the more master you become of that something. It's like any subject. The more you know about it, the more you become master of it. You know how to use it. If I gave you a chainsaw and you didn't know how to use it, that chainsaw would be dangerous for you. If you put it on, then, that'd be very dangerous. But if you knew how to use it, it wouldn't be dangerous anymore. You could use it, use its power. That's the same with your shadows. So imagine depression as an example. Why is it a problem, depression? Is because you probably only ever experience the negative of depression. And the reason for that is depression probably comes on when you need to do something. It's like the last thing you want is to feel depressed when you need to get up and go to work, or go out to a party, or, find a new job. Then suddenly depression becomes your worst nightmare. But the thing is, depression has a value. Depression, if you want to go in to yourself, inward, it's like you want to go into your cave. You want to be able to meditate, to cut off distraction, cut off the outside world. So you've got thinking time. You can go into yourself. You can go deep into things. Then depression's a great energy. Depression is like going into your cave. where there's no distractions around you. You can't hear the outside world. You can't see or think about anything else apart from being in your cave. And the only problem about being in your cave is if you don't want to be in it. If you need to go and get up in the morning, go to your job, you do something. So the idea is, you use that depression, use it when you need it, when you want to isolate yourself, when you want to go into yourself, when you want to go to bed at night and just cut off from the world, connect to your depression. You can use your depression then, and it suddenly becomes an amazing energy. But the problem is, if you've never been able to, you've never experienced that, you've only experienced it in a negative way, it will be your shadow. It'll be a negative thing for you. And here's the thing. When we try and ignore our shadow, ignore our anger, ignore our depression, ignore our depression by giving ourselves tranquilizers or uppers or some kind of drug or distraction. The same with our anger. We might, drink alcohol, to disguise our anger. What happens? Or our anxiety, we take pills to subdue our anxiety. What happens is, it usually gets worse. When we suppress something, it gets worse because the fact is we can't suppress something, and we shouldn't. That's the thing, we shouldn't. When you learn to use your shadows, you can use their great power. When they're master of you, their power is also powerful, but in a negative way for you. That's because you haven't learned how to use it. The same as anything in life. If you haven't learned how to use a car, it would be your biggest nightmare if you try and drive a car or a train or a truck or an aeroplane, or use a tool like a hammer or a screwdriver or a drill, or cook when you don't know how to use the ingredients. So you start putting chili, too much chili in your food, and you burn your mouth. If you don't know how to use things, these powerful things, then they become your enemy. But when you learn how to use them, they become your best friend. And like I said, the thing is, you can't, the more you try and hide away from them or suppress them or sweep them under the carpet, the worse they get. You know that. The more drugs you try and take to suppress something, the more miserable you get. The more you try and suppress your anger, you end up having a heart attack because you suppress it. But the thing is, it's by suppressing it, it doesn't let it go away. It gives it more pressure. You're suppressing it. You're trying to squash it into a small space so it doesn't come out. You're much better off giving it a big space. Give your anger a huge space. If you give your anger a huge space to go into, let it out into the universe, it will dissolve. It will become soft. It's only intense because it's inside you, the same as anxiety. If you give anxiety more space, it won't feel intense anymore. And again, like I said, anxiety, you can use anxiety. Anxiety is like a fast energy. The problem with fast energy, when you try and contain it in your head, it's too much. It gives too much. It goes crazy, right? It's like chaotic energy because there's too much speed in your head or in your body. But give it space or do something with it. Go for a run, and your anxiety enjoys that. You can use the anxiety then. It becomes your friend. It helps you. Or if you want to get something done, if you want to motivate yourself to get something done fast, urgently, if you use anxiety, you can get jobs done fast because it gives you a sense of urgency. But the problem is if you don't know what to do with it, then it becomes too much, too overwhelming. So have a good thing about your shadows. They're so important to work on these. There's lots of shadows. We have lots of shadows. These are just the big 5 that I see in a lot of people. Again, anger. Often anger comes from something. Maybe our parents. We've got hidden anger towards one of our parents or about something. Or we've got depression because we can't face things in life. We can't face things that have happened in life. So we kind of depress ourselves. Addiction, that's another big shadow, huge shadow. We're all addicted to things. We're all addicted. Our whole life is an addiction. Habits, let's say, we don't view them as addictions. Cleaning your teeth in the morning, you don't view that as an addiction. You might call that a habit, but it's really a small addiction, because if you try to stop cleaning your teeth for a month, you'd probably struggle. Eating breakfast in the morning. Again, if you try to stop eating breakfast in the morning for a month, you might struggle, because it's become a small addiction. You might call it a habit, a good habit, a bad habit. Often we call addictions bad habits, and very strong bad habits. So there's different levels of habits and different kind of levels of addiction. And again, we make addiction an enemy because we normally view it as a bad addiction, a drug addiction, a sugar addiction, a food addiction. And the problem is, when we start to fight against these addictions and we start saying, I don't want to eat so much, I must stop eating, or stop smoking, or stop taking drugs, we're actually suppressing our addiction. We're trying to squash it. We're trying to control it. Hardly ever works. You know that. How many people do you know who are constantly dieting, and they're bouncing from one diet to the other, or giving up smoking? Oh, it's like their 100th time they've tried to give up smoking. It's mainly because they're trying to suppress their addiction rather than getting to know their addiction. They think they know it because they experience addiction a lot, but they don't know it. They don't know it. They're not a master of it. That's when you know something, when you become more masterful of your addiction. How do you master your addiction of smoking? It's about mastering your addiction. If you've learned how to be addicted subconsciously or consciously to smoking, to eating unhealthy foods, to having bad habits, you've learned that addiction. Therefore, you know that you can learn how to addict to things. And the thing about addiction is, it doesn't want to be suppressed. It wants to be used. So instead of using it to do bad things, start learning to use it to do good things, like cleaning your teeth, like going to the gym. People have learned to do those things, eating more healthy. When they use their addiction, when they use that ability, I would say, that power to addict themselves to create good habits. It takes time, of course. Bad addictions have taken a long time usually, to kind of build up. So you need to kind of create new addictions, which can take time. But how do you get addicted to something? You start seeing what you like about it. You start getting into it. You start getting obsessed with it, like going to the gym, studying about it, looking at it, being inspired by it. You start getting more and more addicted. You start enjoying it more. And the more you do it, of course, it releases lots of good, hormones in the body and things like this. And you start using your addiction to do good things. So it's really amazing what you can do, how you can change your shadow. And you should definitely think, really seriously look into, this kind of shadow work, how to use your shadow, not get rid of your shadow. That's the biggest mistake people make, is to I hate my shadow, I want to get rid of it. I want to lock it up in a room, I want to shove it under a carpet, I want to ignore it. No, that does not work. It might work for a period of time. You might think it's working because you've hidden it, but it will come up worse than ever. If you suppress something long enough, it will give you some kind of illness inside your body, or possibly it will come into your life from the outside. If you're suppressing your anger, suddenly you'll either have a heart attack, because that's what that anger's done in your body, because you've suppressed it. And anger, you can imagine, if your body gets angry and angry and angrier, you'll give yourself some high blood pressure. Or it can come out in weird ways around you. So suddenly you get a job and you've got a really angry boss, or you go into a relationship and your partner's very abusive and angry. So, when we suppress things, they come out either inside us or outside us. The best thing you can do is learn more about your shadow, learn how you can use them. This is super powerful work. It's a complete life hack. I've been using this work for years for myself. It works. It takes time. Some shadows are big. It works. And the more you practice this kind of work, the more you become more masterful of your shadows. And suddenly they become your best friends. Your life will change. You can use your shadows to live your dream. Honestly, in so many wonderful ways. So if you want to have a session with me, if you've never had a session with me, I will give you a session. Well, certainly right now, this year, 2023, for £8. I'll give it to you probably in 2024 as well. I'll give you a session if you've never had a session with me for £8. It's an hour session with me on the phone, and I will guide you through something that will help you with one of your shadows. So have a think about it. If you've had a session with me before, I will give you a session for £25. I normally charge a lot more than that. But if you've heard this video and you come up and say, I heard your video, Gary, I'll take that offer. I'll give that to you, even if you're a client of mine, and I charge you a lot more money. So have a think about it. This work is powerful. So get in touch. Either email me on garyweiner@hotmail.co.uk, or you can go onto my website, freedomaster.org, and you can contact me from there, or you can WhatsApp me or text me on +44 7956 9888 54. So that's +44 7956 988854. You can WhatsApp or text me or signal me or telegram me. Take the opportunity. This could change your life. I've changed people's lives, and some of them very, very quickly. So hope you enjoyed this video in the dark. It is shadow work, and remember, keep living the dream.